Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline Comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kelber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday night as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, 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 faithful watchers of the Silverline Wednesday Whams. Tonight, we are down 2 people of our regulars, but we are joined by Haley Martin. Yay!
Hello.
And the venerable Rob Davis, a perennial here.
Hey, hey.
Myself, Barbara Kjellberg, and tonight's very special guest, Darick Robertson.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. I have known Darick for 30 plus years.
Still one of the best inkers I've worked with.
Wow, thank you. That
You rock, Barb.
Sweet.
Does rock.
Better because of you.
Yeah.
I love hearing stuff like that. Of course, all artists are a little bit vain and egotistical, but and not me included.
Not me. I'm too good to be vain and egotistical.
That's right. So Rob was just Rob's working on our super secret special project back there, which he cannot talk about, and I'm inking it. But
we can talk about it, but we can't tell what it is.
Yeah,
so,
we'd have to tell. We could tell you, but then we'd have to kill you. So
we'd have to come out and assassinate every one of you. So
that sounds like a lot of work for a comic book.
Yeah. So that's why we're not going to talk about it.
You're risking federal penitentiaries.
That's right. Darick just got back from
3 meals a day.
Yeah, 3 meals. That's in these days and ages. That's a plus.
Technically, I just got back from Comic-Con. I got back from Europe a few weeks ago.
Where he won an award.
I did.
And can you tell our wonderful viewers what the award was for?
It's the official thing is called UV. Sorry, I'm
blanking. Yeah, that's.
Well, I got con brain. I just got home from Comic-Con. If anybody's ever been to Comic-Con, like names, I won't be able to recall anybody's name for at least a week.
Well, this is true.
And so I'm blanking on, and I see everything in my head visually. So like I have to see the word in my head to remember it, but I can remember the logo. It's very strange. Anyway, it was an excellent, it wasn't an award for memory. It was an excellence an award for comic art. And it was very, very kind of them to give it to me. It was a big like presentation, very professional, and sent me home with a trophy. And I was not even aware that I was up for the award. And I was so very grateful. And they and I know I speak Italian, not very well, but well enough. And I was able to give my acceptance speech in Italian, and they were really excited about
Wow.
Wow.
I can say ciao. That's about it.
that. Parlo un poco Italiano.
Buongiorno.
Molto bene. Sì, ciao.
Wow. That was very sure they were impressed. Now, can you
Well,
see anything at all on here, or is it all just audio for you?
Oh no, I see you, and I see
Okay, good.
I
That's
see
good.
Haley's avatar, and I see my little headshot pulsing as I speak.
Yes, good, because we have photos. So we're going to
Yeah,
kick
she's
this
gonna
off
show
because,
up.
yeah,
She always does research and brings up past work. So
I
be ready.
I do my research
Good,
on
bad,
all
and
our,
ugly, and
that's right.
Like
we're
Paul
gonna-
McCartney says, my ever-present past.
That's
go.
right. We're gonna dive right in because I got a lot of ground to cover, and you don't have to give long-winded answers to everything, but give it dirty on some of it anyway. Apparently, I did not know this until I researched today that you broke in when you were 17 while you were still
I
in
did.
school. And
Yes,
you were
I was still in high school.
And you were working as a bill collector.
Yeah, so and a Pizza Hut
So
shift
excited.
supervisor.
Bill
So
collector.
I know
Wow.
way too much about how your Pizza Hut pizza is put together, and I don't recommend you eat them.
Oh yeah,
and
get you there.
I worked at Pizza Hut for about a month as the pizza.
Oh, then
cooker,
did
so,
you remember
yeah.
the dough machines?
Oh yeah.
You risked your art career putting your hand in it.
No kidding.
And the dough mixers will take your arm off if you're not careful.
Yeah, I didn't do the dough mixing. I saw the machine though. But yeah, I worked at night, and apparently the dough was made through the middle of the night. And
Oh,
then
I
they
used
come in, yeah.
It was
But
to
you
prep
used to,
for the next day. So
okay, so you were the guy working the night before to fix the stuff that I was using.
I worked
the next
day
day.
and night. I was a very ambitious kid.
Driven.
Oh.
Well, and that's what it takes to make it in this industry. It just
I think that's what it
driven.
takes to pay rent.
Yes, that too.
Yes, sir.
But you have been creating characters for as long as you've been working in comics, and from the age of 17. Can you tell us about this one?
Space Beaver. Yes. It was the joke nobody got. I was doing Space Beaver as he started as a doodle at my bill collecting job, and I just liked the name. It just stuck in my head. It was based on something my friend had been saying. My friend was watching a Kiss interview, and for whatever reason, they were all, I guess, a little intoxicated. And Eric Carr, the late great Eric Carr, who was their then drummer, kept sticking his hand in front of Gene Simmons, who really didn't seem to be enjoying it, with a puppet on his hand, and he'd go, "Space Bear." And so my friend, who was a huge Kiss fan, he would just interrupt any conversation. This is back in 84, 85. And he would interrupt any conversation with "Space Bear." And one day I just had Space Bear stuck in my head, and because he did it so often, I started doing it. And then as kids will. And then but then I was thinking, I like otters, and I like beavers, and I like those kind of animals. And I was a big fan of Rocket Raccoon, and I was a big fan of Captain Carrot and the Zoo Crew at the time, by the great Scott Shaw. And so I just made up my own black and white character, but mostly just a doodle, because I like the idea, because I've always had this sixth sense of humor. And my sixth sense of humor was like, what if there was these cute little animals that look like Care Bears or whatever, but when they shoot each other with the laser guns and stuff, like blood and guts come flying out and their heads explode in incredible detail. And, the kind of shit I'm known for now. Oh, is this a family show, or am I not allowed to swear?
A little bit within reason.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll try to keep it G-rated. I didn't ask beforehand.
PG-13 is okay.
Okay, well then they've heard the S word. So anyway, I just kind of use that sort of that that sick side of my sense of humor has always been there, and long before I was known
And I
for
love it. I love you for it.
So I even in Space Beaver, there's like blood and guts, and one of the best lines I ever wrote as a kid was "Kiss my fuzzy ass," and so he. But it was really just supposed to be funny. I was making fun of the pathos that I was seeing in comics, and I wanted to do these like big heavy dramas with these cute furry animals, and I wanted their emotional angst to be so palpable, and then when they die bloody, and I just thought that was hilarious. And his tagline was "Don't call him cute." And he but I just started writing and drawing it on as I did most of my comics in those days, on typing paper with like a ballpoint pen or whatever pens I had. I had no belief that this would ever get published. But at my after school job, this bill collecting job, there was a security guard who worked the front door we had to sign in and out from, and he was working in a sketchbook. His name is Michio Okamura, and Michio has actually gone on to be quite successful in video games and design. But in those days, he was an inker on a book called Shuriken from a tiny company called Viz. And
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Michio was
remember
the
that.
inker.
Yeah.
And I saw him working in a sketchbook and kind of peeked over his shoulder, and his work was incredibly good. He worked in a manga style, obviously, but it was so professional and beautiful. I was like, whoa, hey, I draw too. We started talking, and I was showing him my sketchbook, and he really liked my work, and he invited me over to his house to see what he does, and showed me how he does stuff on 11x17 Bristol board, and the tools were and stuff that I never really thought about, even though it was right there in the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way book. I didn't know where to go buy Bristol board or anything, because I'm a kid. And then he ended up really liking my little 8-page Space Beaver story that I made up in summer school, panel by panel. So the first 8 pages of the original Space Beaver #1 comic were written and drawn, or the basis of it was written and drawn in summer school. I would end up like drawing it again on good paper and trying to be a professional. And it was Viz said they would publish it as a backup story in a book called Komodo and the Defiance. And I was like, whoa, I'll get published? So I was, we can't pay you, but if you work real hard, we'll publish you. And we'll make money off your work, but we won't give you any of it. But all I heard was published. And so,
and you realize how important that is, because a lot of people say, have you ever been published? Yes, I have.
Right. I'm still living at home. I was happy when the school newspaper published my cartoons,
That's
and
right.
so I was like, sure, that sounds great. But as I started putting the work together, little did I know that this little flop of an indie black and white book called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, nobody didn't really catch on, sadly. But people were really into it back in the 80s. Not really sure what happened with that property, but the people in the 80s were all looking for the next black and white #1 that was going to go through the roof, because retailers made such a fortune off of the original run of Ninja Turtles that they thought, okay, anybody who can do a funny animal comic in black and white, they'd publish it. So this was the first bubble I went through. Now, I didn't know this was going on. I was just happy to be doing my thing, because like I said, I was a senior in high school. And but I was going into this comic book shop, and a lovely guy named Tibor Sardi, he had a local comic shop. He said, hey, this is too good to be a backup feature. I'll publish you. And I was like, published? And he paid me in free comics. And so got a hell of a collection. But I did 11 issues of Space Beaver. I wrote and I drew every issue, and I started getting to go to comic book conventions because I had a book to promote, and they'd put me on the guest list and give me a table, and I started meeting people like a very young and up and coming Jim Lee, and a guy named Rob Liefeld was just breaking in, and we would I'd see him at
It
cons.
was a wonderful time in comics, wasn't it?
It really was, because you could go up to tables and talk to editors and get to know people personally. And if
They'd
you
sit
had
down
talent,
with you behind, they just sit behind the table on the floor and go through your portfolio. It was awesome.
Yeah, and give you feedback. And if you were good, they'd let you know. And if you weren't so good, they'd let you know. And if you had potential, they'd remember you the next time you came around with fresh stuff. And you know, and I still try to do that for young people that come up to me and want portfolio reviews, because it meant so much to me then. You know, and I know enough to edit, but but it was a good time.
Mr. Bracey, 90s, it was a university bookstore in Dick Blick.
Yeah.
So
that's how Space Beaver came to be.
And
in fact, that's where I still get my stuff is from Dick Blick. I have to get it mail order. I don't live near a big city with a good art store. I've got Michael's and Hobby Lobby, but that's not even close to having everything that you need to do the job right. Yep.
Do any of you work with light blue colorized pencils?
Not anymore. I've gone digital in the last 5 years because
I've got one.
I still work like manually, and I'm so bummed because they stopped making. They're no longer making some of the tools I depend on. I don't know what I'm going to do when I use my last non-photo blue or my light blue pencil. I can only get them in a set now. They used to sell them individually on Blick.
I switched from physical to digital about 5 years ago when I turned 60, and I had a little bit of a tremble in my hand, but turn up the smoothing control on the digital, and it's all gone.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm just learning
they
that.
Make light blue lead for mechanical pencils.
Yeah, I got those, but they're not the same as the color race. They're actually kind of
the color. It's a little waxier.
It's much waxy, and so I like to ink on top of my light blue. So for me, it's like I'm learning to ink digitally, but I love having original art when I'm all finished.
Oh yeah, me too.
I figured
I still work.
He still works physically, and I figured
I scan it in and send it to her to ink. So
that's lovely. I've done that too, but
I figured as long as I was going to ink digitally, I might as well learn how to color. So I taught myself that too.
Atta girl.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's my next frontier. And I know I'm using Procreate to learn how to ink digitally. Yes. I've only done one piece.
That's mine too. Procreate.
I like it a lot. It's a great little program. I love sketching and designing on it, because then I don't worry about running out of paper. I don't have to scan it when I'm done. I have sketchbooks all over my studio and in boxes with all the original just drawings of the boys and stuff like that I can't find now.
It's like Photoshop for dummies. And so that was right up my alley. I was 60. I was way behind the curve. So I really loved working on it.
I do too. It's great for sketching. And so my Batman Fortress variant cover was digitally inked on Procreate, and it got published.
Good for you.
Well, something.
Yeah.
So moving on here. It looks like your first job at DC was Justice League Quarterly #4, which is really funny, because my first job with DC was Justice League Quarterly #3.
Hey, look at that. We're practically roommates.
Yes. So you were what, 21? That's a lot earlier than me, though.
I think I was just about to, or just turned 21, and I made myself a promise that if I couldn't break in by the time I was 21, I wasn't meant to be a professional in comics.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That's a hard row to hoe.
My parents were elderly, and I knew I couldn't stay home much longer. They had me late in life. I had to get out on my own.
And you quickly moved from there onto good old Logan. I love this art.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was 2003, so that was almost a decade later.
Yeah. But
I did do a few issues in the 90s, though, around the Justice League time. I got lucky enough that my first Marvel book ever was an issue of Wolverine. I don't know how I got lucky enough that the first books I got were Justice League and Wolverine, but I did.
And this is a later Wolverine, but you jumped onto Wolverine after Justice League. I'm skipping, and I'm skipping some of your works here because if I had to go over every single thing you've done in 30 plus years, we'd
I've
be
been
here all
around a
night.
while. Yeah, I've been around
Yeah.
a while. So
Yeah, it's like
a lot of it's quite forgettable too. So
some of mine too.
We all got to go through that. We all got to go
Exactly.
through that.
Exactly.
And you moved on to Spider-Man.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was mid '90s, so just around the same time as Wolverine, they let me do some Spider-Man gigs. I'd worked on Spider-Man. He popped up in my first ongoing monthly book was New Warriors with Fabian Nicieza, and this was also a story that Fabian wrote. The absolutely as Lionel Hutz from The Simpsons would say, the most flagrant case of false advertising since the movie The Never-Ending Story. This was Spider-Man: The Final Adventure. Fun fact: it wasn't.
And since
We
we
did a
just,
whole bunch more Spider-Man after that.
oh yeah, you did.
No, they did. That
yeah,
wasn't
they
the
did,
Final
yeah.
Adventure.
And since we just did Wolvie, obviously we have to segue into the hot new couple of the month. We have to do not that one. Sorry.
I love Nightcrawler.
Oh, I guess I have Nightcrawler next. I'm sorry. I was going to
Yes.
have Deadpool.
You were thinking it was going to be Deadpool, right?
I did. I've got them out of order. And
But yeah, that's a nice rendering of Nightcrawler.
That
Very
is-
nice.
That was just
Beautiful.
a study piece when I found out it was going to be they were giving me a solo book, and I was understanding it was going to be ongoing. And it was at another weird time of Marvel because it's indicative of my career. I always show up at the party when everybody gets naked and jumps in the pool, and as soon as I decide I'm going to join them, the cops show up. So that seems to be my career. So Marvel was going through a flux pre-Disney sale, and they canceled this book just as it was getting heat. And I didn't get
don't
it.
you hate it when that happens?
It happens to me. It happened to me consistently.
Yeah,
So.
it's a bitch. I know.
I wanted one of
we
those
all
like
get that
30
rug
issue
yanked
runs
out.
on Wolverine or a 30 issue run on Nightcrawler and let it be me, but it didn't work out.
There we go. There's Deadpool. I wanted to bring this one up because does this also you apparently did Deadpool and Pool Boy?
Yeah, I co-created Pool Boy with Jimmy Palmiotti and Buddy Scalera. So I basically designed him. He was my original idea. I mean, my original design. He was in the script. It was Jimmy and Buddy's idea. But
So tell me about Pool Boy because I do not remember Pool Boy.
all I know is those two issues. He ends up being the son of, I think, somebody that Deadpool assassinated, and as a result, like Deadpool tries to, he's going to get revenge on his own, and Deadpool kind of mentors him. It's before he was the real wacky Deadpool.
Oh,
this was before Joe Kelly and and Ed McGuinness, I think, were the first two to do it.
So
But
he wasn't our Deadpool that we know today.
he wasn't the one that was like breaking the fourth wall yet, but he was a little more angsty and not nearly as funny then.
Because I was going to say, what the hell of a kind of a mentor would Deadpool be?
Well, here he was a little more comedic. I mean, in the current incarnation, he's more comedic, but I think that came after these two issues. This was issues 50 and 51. They had me. Art Adams did an incredible cover for 50, and I did. It was his anniversary issue, so it was kind of a cool, big deal that I got to draw him for an anniversary. But like I said, it was right before it was this around 2000. So I remember I was drawing this issue when my wife told me she was pregnant with her first child. So
Oh wow!
it's so I know exactly when it was.
Yes.
Memories. You remember this stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like I can look at almost any page that I did, and it's sort of like almost like a diary. Like I can remember where and when, and kind of what was going on in my life at that time, based on whatever it was I was drawing.
Oh God, that's better than me. I think I've got 5,000 pages or so under my belt. I can't remember half the people I've worked with.
Barb, you worked with me on Solution.
Well, we're getting there. I know this is kind of a sore spot with you, but you helped create Nightman.
I co-created him, and somehow when the book came out, my name wasn't on it.
Yeah, that's a bitch.
It was a bitch because a lot of those ideas were mine. And I thought we were going to share credit, and found out the hard way that, hey, you got to have a lawyer, and you got to make sure that stuff's in writing, because people will tell you one thing and do another. But that costume was 100% my design. And you might notice that Nightman has a big red round left eye. And you might notice in my avatar that Spider Jerusalem had a big round red left eye.
Oh yeah.
And that's because I thought of, wouldn't it be cool if this guy's like a Batman type, if he had like a camera rigged into, and in those days I thought it was, this was pre-digital, so he had like a little mini camcorder on his belt, and he would film evidence to leave behind for the police. Oh, cool. And that was my idea, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool if it was in his eye, and he could get he could record evidence and look at it later and stuff like that. And made it into the character, and that's another thing that I was not given credit for. So when it came time a few years later, I stole it back and stuck it on Spider Jerusalem, and Warren liked it, and he ended up using that idea. So
that's something that. Thanks,
Mr. Bracey. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
that's a lot of us learned the hard ways. You need a good lawyer.
Yeah, it would have been fine, except I don't have to tell you, Barb, like the whole Ultraverse kind of just went poof and disappeared. And I thought, well, it's all over now. I'll just leave it in the past. They made an action figure. They made a TV show. And I never got anything. Nothing.
Yeah, you got it. You
nothing but heartache.
You made up for it, though. Big time.
I guess I was owed some karma.
Another creation of yours. You have created so many characters and books. It's just really impressive. This was
my apology from Malibu for Nightman, and they said, well, we don't want you to leave the company. What do you want to do? And I said, well, I got my own ideas. Can I write and draw a book for you? And they were like, yeah. And this is at the height of the 90s, extreme. So I thought up a character that had a name like, Ripfire. And this actually was written on the side of his motorcycle, and the alien in his head didn't know the difference. So he said, I guess that's my name. And
I'm sorry, Darick. He does not have enough pouches.
No, he needs a couple more, but he does have it.
And spikes.
But for a teenager, he is rather built like a WWE wrestler. That was my big leg period. But that was the soup du jour when I came out with him, and that's definitely what people wanted was, super extreme, super muscle dudes. And so I tried to adapt my idea to that. If I did this today, it would look very, very different. But I wrote and drew it, and was going to be my ongoing book. But like I was saying, I get in the pool naked, and the police show up. So I did those issues of Solution, waiting for the green light on this, and I literally put out one story, and they put it as a backup feature in Barry Smith's Rune as a 10-page, 30-page story, 10 pages each month, which is not how I wanted to tell it, but I adapted. And then they pulled the plug on the whole thing, and then Marvel owns it, and they killed him.
Yes.
And they didn't even let me write his death or draw his death. And it was the irony was I said, this character, if he would never really interact with the rest of the Ultraverse, he should be more like a Daredevil character where he's kind of off doing his own thing all the time. And they were like, yeah, sounds great. And then they put him in Ultraverse and killed him. So not only did they kill my guy, they also stuck him in a team, which I said he would never do.
Oh, ouch.
So it really was like, again, another great lesson. Any of you young creators that might be listening to this, protect your rights.
Yeah, Mr. Bracey, you are absolutely correct. Pouches, spikes, shoulder pads, pipes for no reason, and a giant gun.
That's a giant alien bow and arrow.
You've hit the nail on the head.
That's a bow and arrow that shoots lasers, just for the record. Yeah, I'm with you, Mr. Bracey. That was a really good set of characters with some great creators, and that could have really been something if the industry hadn't gone upside down.
Marvel ended up essentially destroying itself too in the process by buying up all this stuff and then not doing anything with it. So that's essentially flushing money down the toilet.
Mm-hmm. And of course, now we're into the section where we're stroking my ego.
Yeah, I was going to say, didn't you ink that, Barb?
I did.
Yeah, I love that.
Yes.
I always like whenever I see stuff that you inked of mine, it's like so many places, and things will remain nameless. But I never look at your stuff and go, "Man, I got butchered." I always looked at what you did, and I'm like, "She got it."
Thank you. I'm fortunate enough to have several pencilers feel like, and there's the big butt cover.
I like big butts that I cannot lie.
I bring this up every time I talk to you because it's so funny. This is another one that I inked for you folks out there, and it just made me laugh the whole time I'm inking.
Yeah.
I'm inking a huge gray ass.
I should have probably silhouetted it a little bit more. But, I think realistically, that's just my problem.
Oh, but it is eye-catching. You got to admit that. You left out the dangly bits there, because so it's kind of disappointing.
He's got a bunch of dangly bits. They're in the foreground, right by his knee. They're coming off his arm.
Yeah, that's right. And there's another one we did together. That was the big. This is the one.
That was a fun issue.
Yeah, this is the one where I actually taped out with removable tape all of the characters and everything, and I used white paint to make the star
splatter.
Yep, splatter with a toothbrush.
Oh, wow.
And it looks killer. I always loved the issues we worked on together. You always did a great job.
And
this ended up being this was supposed to be my substitute book while I was working up Ripfire and we were preparing for that launch, and it ended up being a lot of fun.
Yeah, and then one more before we move out of the Ultraverse. Dun, dun, dun. You and I again.
Oh yeah,
that was a fun.
Actually, my favorite book at Ultraverse.
Crime.
Yeah, I love. Book.
What a fun character! I had a really good time with those 2 issues too.
Yeah, respect for taping. Yes, I was anal to the extreme. That's
what she said.
Yes.
I didn't know it was that kind of show.
Every line I laid down was pre-thought out. It was remarkable. I could do 2 pages a day as anal as I was, but I did.
That is remarkable because your inks did not look like you were rushing.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Now once we leave the Ultraverse, you tell us about the Man of the Atom.
This was an interesting time. I first worked with Warren on a book for Malibu called Ultraverse, and it was 3 issues, and he had scripted them, but he wasn't doing his own dialogue, which is amazing because I can't imagine a Warren Ellis book without Warren Ellis dialogue. But they had Ian Edgington writing the dialogue over Warren's plotting. Yeah.
That's unusual.
But the very first team that worked on Transmetropolitan #1 ended up being the very first team on the Ultraverse. So Jerome K. Moore was inking me, and it transferred over to this book, and this was edited by my old pal Fabian Nicieza, and he put us together, and I didn't know it at the time, but Warren had requested me because I told Warren how much I enjoyed his script. I have a really good eye for talent. I'm not even bragging when I say I've called it many a career before they got big, and they did. I told Jim Lee back when he was working on Alpha Flight, they should put you on X-Men, and I was right. And so Warren was apparently scoping out to see what I would do with a sci-fi story as opposed to a punch-em, superhero thing. And he was really impressed with what I did with Man of the Atom. So that actually was unknown to me, my audition for Transmetropolitan, because when he got the green light to go ahead with that idea at what would be Helix Comics, he asked me if I would be willing to draw it, and we ended up co-creating. He thought I'd only do 3 issues. I said I'd stick around and stay on it as long as possible, and he was so excited. He made me co-creator, and we ended up creating that whole world of Transmetropolitan together. But it all comes down to Man of the Atom. Yes. Speaking of Spider Jerusalem and his big red eye.
Oh God. I'm arachnophobic, so this just gives me the willies.
You want to hear the weirdest story about this cover?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm living in Brooklyn, New York. My child had just been born, 2 weeks old. I was going to fly out of town the next day for my sister-in-law's wedding. And we were all preparing to go. My friend had come in from Italy and was staying with us. And I stayed up all night because I had to get this cover done, which is why you can see I'm exhausted in my little signature drawing of myself. And I did the final touches on it. I draw all these buildings falling down, all these people falling through the air, city in chaos. And guess what day it was? September 11th, 2001.
2001.
And so I go to bed at 8:30 that morning. My wife wakes me up 20 minutes later to tell me the plane had hit the tower. I go out to my window and I could see the World Trade Center from my window of my apartment in Brooklyn. And I could see, and I have photos of the first tower smoking, and I took a little video of it too. And I remember the most prophetic thing I ever said into my camera was like, this might be historic. So I went back to bed thinking, okay, this is an accident. They'll talk about it all day on the news and, get the fire out. And then she wakes me up again. She goes, another plane has hit a tower. And I went, that's weird. And so I got up and then I didn't sleep for the rest of the day. And I remember watching the other towers fall, as we all did, but I was there. And that's the last thing I drew before the plane hit the tower. How weird is that?
That is, well, you said you were kind of prophetic, so
I guess so. But I mean, there's another example of that book being prophetic. I mean, the little people falling through the air and the smoldering towers collapsing. And I'm like, of all the things I could have drawn. And ironic, a year later, they were like, we're not going to release this cover because it's going to traumatize people. I'm like, you guys are releasing photographs on Time magazine of the actual event. My, Godzilla spider can't be published. So I won that argument.
Yes. It's a Floramonte flyby. Hi, Tommy.
Hey, Tommy.
Howdy, Thomas.
That is a very weird, it gives me the goosebumps.
Yeah, crazy. Just absolutely of all the things.
And that brings us to
another comic that never quite caught on.
No, that's just all. So tell us how the boys came about, because truthfully, the last thing that I would have ever thought of was taking a bunch of superheroes and making them into a bunch of jackasses.
Well, it really came about from when I was wrapping up Transmetropolitan. Ellis and I had been doing a lot of work at Marvel together and really having a lot of fun. And we both lived in New York at the time, so we were spending a lot of time together. And he wanted to know if I would be interested in doing a creator-owned book with him when I was done with Transmet, and I was definitely interested, but then Marvel offered me Wolverine and an exclusive contract to draw Wolverine with Greg Rucka, and I just couldn't say no. I needed I had a child and I needed the security, and so I told Ennis I couldn't do it, and he understood. I said, I love the idea, but originally it was supposed to be set in the DCU like Hitman was. And sort of like a lot more subtle than what we ended up doing. But we realized pretty quickly after a few months of trying to figure out where it would fit and getting some rebuff from DC about what we could get away with, I started to realize, like, we can't really do this in the DCU. So why don't we do a Watchmen style thing and just take our own and make our own characters out of these archetypes and tell the story you want to tell? Because Ennis's idea, from the get-go was he loved the idea that if we had superheroes in our real world, they would be as corrupt as, any other, celebrities or politicians or the like. Sure. And so, but that's if they were in our world, like our actual world, rather than go into a metropolis or a fantasy world like that. So it was that was the initial concept. And there's a scene in Bad Taste, one of the very first films by guy who makes Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson. And he's like, and the guy picks up a phone and goes down the list, and it just says The Boys, and he presses the button on the phone to call them. And he's just like, I always wanted to put together a team called The Boys. And so that was where it started with with Ennis's pitch, but it was, as it went on, we took about 4 years between, because then I went and took the Marvel contract, and he waited, and he said, about a year into my Wolverine run, he said, hey, when you're done with Wolverine, would you want to do that book? Because it has to be you. And I'm like, oh yes, God, I'm glad you didn't find somebody else. I really want to work on this. And I'm still regretting that I had said no. And he's like, okay, great. When you're done with your Marvel contract, we'll set this up. And we did. And but we took that 4 years to develop it. And so, at one point I was like, what if we made what if the female was Japanese instead of being English? And he goes, oh, I like that. So it was my idea to change her. And Mother's Milk Power came from an idea that I had. He goes, oh, let's give it to this guy. And I said, oh, okay, cool. Like, I like the idea of inherited superpowers. My wife was breastfeeding. You can understand where it came from. I found myself thinking about breastfeeding and how weird it is. Anything she eats goes into the baby. And, so it was, but that's kind of like where we interacted and thought these characters up. And, and it was obviously a great idea that was the number one selling book at Wildstorm until DC went, this is too much, and canceled it.
Yeah, and see, and I'm going to get on my soapbox here for a little bit, but one of the reasons that I'm doing indies these days is because you can do what you want to do.
Yes.
And the bean counters at DC or Marvel or Disney, and don't get me wrong, I am eternally grateful to DC and Marvel, and those guys were awesome, but they won't go beyond a certain point because they have to answer to higher ups.
Well, that's really what it came down to. It wasn't the people at Wildstorm or even DC proper that necessarily had the biggest problem with it. It was people above them.
Warner Brothers and Disney.
Yeah, Warner Brothers.
Yeah, and that's really when those things just started to happen. So we're talking about 2007 when this came out. So, and also the irony was that Wildstorm was supposed to be that indie company where we could do whatever we wanted. So, because it was an image company that Jim put under the umbrella of DC, and I want to always preface this story with saying DC Comics was great about it. I understood why they didn't want to continue on with it, but they did not make our lives miserable. They did everything they could to make it an easy transition. We got set up at Dynamite. We had every publisher in the industry was making us an offer. I went with Dynamite because I had known Nick Berrucci a long time, and he was, and they had effortlessly set us up over there. So if it weren't for DC being cool, they could have buried this thing under a, lock vault, and we could have just fought them until the end of time. And
that's what usually happens, unfortunately.
Yeah, they have better lawyers.
Yeah, I mean, they could have just been jerks about it, but they weren't at all. They were quite the opposite. So, and they also offered to keep me under contract because I had an exclusive to work on The Boys. But they said, well, we don't want to lose you. We recognize you did really good work here, and we're happy that you want to, so you can work on The Boys wherever it lands and stay under contract if you wish. And I was like, well, why wouldn't I? So made myself a deadline nightmare by doing that move, but I needed the security.
And yes, Mr. Bracey, I agree 100% that indie's the way to go these days, because the writers and
it's where the fresh ideas are. It's where the fresh ideas are. And that's what the industry needs to remember is that every 10, 15 years, you need fresh ideas. And they're squelched at the big two right now. They're being killed there. So, yeah. So I agree. That's why I'm with Silverline and also doing my own stuff. So
I have my own book at Silverline. So absolutely. It's PG, but still it's a little different. So it doesn't fall into a niche, a nice, comfortable niche. So do it myself.
This is a funny coincidence. I have my my satellite radio playing at the moment, but it's muted because I talk to you. But of all songs that could be on right as we're having this conversation, "Boys Keep Swinging" by David Bowie.
Oh my God!
What are the chances?
So it's life is weird sometimes like that. Wow.
Glitch in the Matrix.
The first time that I saw this piece here, it wasn't the characters I saw; it was the negative space.
Oh, thank you.
That it caught my attention. Yeah, it's like, what am I looking at here? I'm trying to sit there trying to figure it out. Oh, they're all looking down.
Yeah.
Let me see.
But it's,
Well,
yeah,
if you
that-
look at the
it-
first page of issue 1, you'll see that it's a superhero getting his face stomped. And I always
Yes.
like to do stuff like this where I imagined this was the point of view of the superhero right before that happens on
Yes,
page
I saw
1.
that.
Because
I saw that cover.
that image on page 1 doesn't really relate to anything else that happens in the issue. So for me, it was always like a before and after of the cover.
Homelander. Which one of you, Garth or you, came up with Homelander?
Garth had the idea for an evil Superman because it was going to be Superman. And then, but I love Superman too much. I wouldn't have been cool with making Superman do what Homelander does. His original name was Liberator, and the first costume I designed for him was much more Nazi themed, in that I had a big giant, like Nazi style eagle on his chest, and his uniform was overwhelmingly white, for obvious reasons. But as we got more into it, we wanted to kind of bring a little bit more of the Superman vibe into it and tone down the Nazi stuff. So we did, and it was my idea to put the American cape on him because I had read this thing that said patriotism is the last refuge of a scoundrel. Yep. And like the idea of him literally wrapping himself in the flag. And Ennis, being a big 2000 AD fan, wanted to put a Judge Dredd style eagle on his shoulder. So we did that, and I thought to put the chain as the thing holding it. I thought that was kind of a different look. And that's how Homelander came to be.
Mr. Prophetic there. It could not be more timely.
God, the TV show has really jumped on it.
I mean, the Homelander could not be more timely in this day.
He was never popular in the comics, so I mean, we're blessed to have such incredible writers.
Yes.
Wow, how'd you get that image?
Wow, that's a Kirby knockoff if I ever saw one.
It's 100% a Kirby knockoff. I stole his
love it. Yeah.
I want to do 100% Kirby. I have 2 images that I did for that season, and I'm not allowed to show the other one, but it's really funny.
I told you, I did my research before these podcasts.
I just don't even know where that would have popped up.
It's in the depths of the interwebs.
Oh, they let me put this out. I remember now when the season was launching with him in it, they said I could show this off on the day of launch.
So here's the big question I want to know.
Yes.
Did Hollywood come knocking on your door, or did you go shopping it to Hollywood?
Oh, quite. Yeah, they definitely came. It was ironic because it was right after DC gave us our rights back. And we had just gotten over to Dynamite, and we got a film option like that year. And ironically, it dwindled for a decade. And I thought and the year that we found out we were getting the show, I had done the smartest thing anybody that works in this kind of an industry could do, and I gave up all hope. I said,
after that time, then it happened.
Never going to happen. Give it up, Darick. You're never going to have this.
It took you 10 years to become an overnight sensation.
Pretty much. 2018, they did the show. It was 2008. They optioned it for the first time. And the day it was supposed to get greenlit at Sony was the year that the tsunami hit Japan, and they lost like $11 million or more overnight because of it. And they basically cut the ties on any property that wasn't a surefire thing at Sony Pictures. And we got the boot, and we got put into a thing called, I know so much about film industry stuff now that I didn't know then, but we got put into turnaround. And what turnaround means is that they drop your auction and it's up for grabs again. But Adam McKay, who was about to start winning Oscars every year for Best Picture, really loved it, and he was working hard at trying to get it greenlit. We became friends. He had me in his office, showed me what he was doing. He kept all my costumes intact. Said that, I was like so excited to see my costumes on the big screen, and then they just wouldn't greenlight it. But you remember 2008 was also the year that Iron Man finally broke ground on what a superhero movie could be, and was super successful. So, and that was a Sony production. So they actually didn't know what they didn't know. So it was interesting because that was a game changer for superhero stuff. But up until then, they were like, if we're going to do The Boys, it's got to be like a hard PG-13 at best. And, and we were kind of like, well, and Adam McKay could have, threaded that needle because Anchorman's amazing. It's a PG film. But I just was happy that it ultimately never happened. Paramount had it for a little while. They didn't move on it. And then when Eric Kripke found out that the rights were available for The Boys, like he was talking to a guy named Ori Marmer about how much he loved the comic, and we have that. We have the rights to that. Kickstart never gave up on us. And so next thing we know, they wanted to work with Kripke so much because of his success on Supernatural.
Oh, I'm a huge Supernatural fan.
Yeah, well, thank you, because his success on that made everything possible for The Boys to get up and going like really fast. And here we are today, 5 seasons later, Best Series nomination. Our 3rd spinoff was just announced. I mean, it couldn't be more successful. And I never in a million years imagined I'd be witnessing this.
Or be on the set with such amazing people.
Oh, they're so great. And they're the nicest people. I just got to party with them on Saturday, and we had such a nice time. I love that they're genuinely good people that want to hang out with me. And I have now got to know personally. And, I'm a very lucky guy.
How much have they strayed from the original?
Quite a bit, but I don't really care. For me... Well, I mean, because it's like Warren Alan Moore said really well. Somebody said, "Do you care that they've ruined your comic?" And he said, "Oh, my comics are just fine."
Yes,
and
that's right. Like, that's right.
And I am actually a big believer that one of the greatest things about this show is you can actually watch it, and the show doesn't spoil the comics, and the comics don't spoil the show. So you can enjoy them simultaneously and have a different experience with both. So
I think they've stayed true to the ideal.
The essence is there, and that's the most important.
Exactly. Kind of like Iron Man. Iron Man was the same way. The movie it wasn't exactly the comic, but it felt right. It just felt right.
The things that mattered were there, like when he makes his own suit. Like in that cave, it's like it looks just like the original Kirby suit, but they found a totally different way of presenting it. I thought, and that's what I feel like they're doing with The Boys. I feel like everything, you're right, Mr. Bracey. Spider-Man and Batman. James Cameron was going to do a Spider-Man film once upon a time in the 90s. But I was so happy that it's good, because the characters are right. The essence of it is right. Mm-hmm. The plot of it is right. It's exactly what it needs to be an adaptation,
and
but it's its own great TV show.
We need to get this into the producers in Hollywood, get this into their head. They get a property and then they change it.
Well,
they steal the essence out of it, throw it away.
Well,
and then
they were
just
stealing
use
the wrong parts. Yeah. Well, I remember talking to my friend Boaz Yakin, who was the writer of that Dolph Lundgren Punisher film. And I remember asking him, like, why did they take the skull off his chest? And he shook his head and he's like, they said it would be too comic booky. And I'm like,
Yeah.
You bought a comic book character.
Exactly. Why are you adapting a comic book character if you're afraid of it looking like a comic book character? But, I got lucky in that Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, Eric Kripke, they all came in loving the comic and really respecting the comic. And the greatest thing that happened was Kripke sat down with me before he started writing and asked me what I wanted the show to be like. And I was so touched and shocked that I even got to have that conversation with him, that it was the beginning of a friendship. And we are still friends to this day. And he's still great. I could still reach out to him and ask questions and things. I don't sit in the writer's room or anything, and that's okay. It's not my job. But I do get to go up and be on set. They care if I like stuff. It's very nice.
He definitely likes to hang on to his supernatural people. I hear he's bringing Jared Padalecki in for the next.
I hope so. I hope Jared Padalecki gets to be a part of Lot Rising. I know, because Jensen Ackles is starring.
Yeah. That's what I heard.
And
and
Jeffrey Dean Morgan's in season 4.
Yeah, JDM really cool. And Jim Beaver.
Yeah, he is very loyal though. Kripke has a no assholes policy on his set. So if you're a good person, he'll keep working with you.
That's good. And it's good to find loyalty in Hollywood, period. You know,
Yes.
to have people that will back you up no matter what.
Well, we're kind of in a golden age where the media and the adaptations are staying more faithful. I think everything I'm seeing.
Better.
Like, it got better from Iron Man on. Like I remember taking my kids to see the Avengers back when it first came out, and that whole sequence where Captain America's like, knocks out a couple monsters, jumps on top of a cab after doing like a backflip. I started weeping, and my son was like, "What's wrong, Dad?" And I'm like, "I just never thought I'd see anything this good with Captain America in it."
That first Avenger was just incredible.
Yeah,
Kirby brought to the screen.
Absolutely,
Kirby brought to the screen.
And the love they brought to it. They brought the majesty of the character. You see that terrible one with J.D. Matt Salinger from the 90s.
I refuse.
Like the rubber ear.
And
they made the Red Skull Italian because those awful Italians trying to take over the world. Right after they give you a good meal and get you drunk on good wine, they got to take over the world. But yeah, that was the funny part. You watch that film and it's got like the world's worst theme song to open it. It's like somebody playing an acoustic guitar. And I'm like, this is Captain America. Where's the pomp and circumstance?
That's right. Born boy from the 4th of July. Come on.
Yeah.
Chris Evans nailed it.
He did.
And he nailed it.
Yeah, that's why it's funny when they're all freaking out about Robert Downey Jr. playing Dr. Doom. I'm like, you kind of got over Chris Evans being Human Torch. What's the problem here?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah, he managed it. He managed to go from Johnny Storm to Captain America. It happens.
People were bitching about, why are they getting Johnny Storm to play Cap? And I'm going, he's a freaking actor. He's a good actor. I can tell from how he did Johnny.
Now people are saying, well, if they're going to bring Robert Downey Jr. and he's not playing Iron Man, they better keep the Dr. Doom mask on the entire time. And I'm like,
tell that to any actor.
Yeah.
That ain't happening. I mean, they tried to find reasons to tear up Tobey Maguire's mask all through that first Spider-Man film. They were always showing his face.
Yeah, I also really hated the fact that they didn't go with. If you look online on YouTube, you'll find test footage of the animated face mask that Raimi had made for Green Goblin, and it looks awesome. And I still to this day don't know why they didn't go with that.
Yeah. The rigid mask was a little off-putting. Yeah,
it's
even
animatronic.
Darth Vader, they eventually took it off.
Well, I don't mind it so much in Spider-Man because they always handled it really well. But my God, in Batman movies, they couldn't keep that mask on him for the first half hour. They went through 40 years of comics with him never taking it off, but somehow in the movies he always had to reveal his identity to somebody. Yeah, you're right. V for Vendetta, great film. But they did in the Batman movie, like first one, like Alfred lets Vicky Vale into the Batcave. What universe am I in? Alfred would never do that.
We're going to have you come back and talk not about your career, but just about comics in general, because this is fun.
I can do that.
Oh, yeah.
I got an opinion on everything. So, especially if you follow me on Twitter, that's a fact. So,
yes.
All right. I should actually run anyway. I'm supposed to wrap up on a cover here that's late. I'm inking, Barb. I'm inking.
Oh yes, I know. So many people are inking their own books these days.
I like that.
For anyone who isn't aware of it, I have a crowdfunder that is going on right now. It's my own book, Divinity, and you can find the link in the comments. Please, I have 1 week left. Please go and back the crowdfunder. I would very
close. We're close.
It won the best new independent comic of 2020. This is issue number 4. I know it's been a long time in between issues. Real life gets in the way sometimes. Had a lot of.
But you're not rolling in all that sweet indie comics money.
Not exactly.
All 20 cents.
Yes, but you know what? I tell this to people here. I make no bones about the fact I'm 65. I am retired. I have a retirement. I do comics because I honestly love them
Yep.
with all my heart. Once you get into the comics industry, it's like the herpes virus. You can never get it out of your system.
I just love telling stories, and it's like a great place to do them. And you're a great looking 65, Barb. I didn't know you were that. I didn't realize you were
70.
over 65.
You don't look it. In a couple of weeks, I turned 70.
You two are looking good.
Thank you. Yeah, my
Comics
dad's
keep us
87.
young, man. Comics keep us young.
Did you say comics keep us young? Oh, God. Tell my waistline. Oh, that's good.
I didn't say they kept us thin. I said they kept us young.
Well, fair enough.
Derek,
and I also have
Haley, next time you got to talk less.
No, I've just been soaking it in.
Yeah.
We really do need to have you come back. Yes, Pops. I did say I am 65, but I don't feel like it, and I don't dream like I'm 65.
That's great.
We absolutely do need to have you come back and just chatter about nothing. We have entire shows that we just start cold.
We yak about this crazy stuff. Yeah.
Well,
whatever we feel like.
As you can tell, I'm not difficult to get going. So
it was an absolute pleasure to have you and to talk to you again after all these years. You were one of my very favorite pencilers of all time.
Oh, thank you, Barbie.
Short list. I have a very short list, and you were on it.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
We want to say thank you for being with us tonight. And
nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Come back again.
Thanks to all your wonderful watchers that were nice enough to chime in with nice things to say and interesting additions. Thank you all.
And as we like to say here in Silverline Land, make mine Silverline.
Hey, I'm G-Rod. Make mine Silverline. You heard me.